What if the Lord of Flies was not a demon, but once a god, a forgotten deity deliberately defamed and cast into darkness? What if his true story has been suppressed for millennia? Beelzebub, often depicted as second in command of hell, is a figure synonymous with demonic power and pestilence. From ancient grimoires to modern horror films, his image as the Lord of Flies evokes revulsion and fear, a symbol of corruption and decay. But how did this entity become so deeply entrenched in our collective nightmares? Join us as we delve into the ancient origins of Beelzebub, tracing his path from potential divinity to the depths of demonic infamy, and uncovering the hidden forces that shaped his terrifying legacy. We'll reveal surprising connections, explore forgotten rituals, and challenge everything you thought you knew about this infamous figure. This video will deconstruct Beelzebub's conventional demonic image, revealing the complex layers of his identity and exploring whether his reputation accurately reflects his true origins and purpose. While demonology may seem like a realm of pure myth, understanding the evolution of figures like Beelzebub offers invaluable insights into the historical, religious, and political forces that have shaped our understanding of good and evil, order and chaos. Let's begin our descent into the murky depths of history, where we'll unearth the surprising and potentially divine origins of Beelzebub. To truly understand Beelzebub's terrifying legacy, we must first challenge the conventional notion that he was always a demon, a denizen of hell from time immemorial. Before the flies and the fury, before the whispers of corruption, lay a different story, one rooted in the ancient world. This brings us to the earliest origins of this figure, tracing his roots in ancient Semitic religions and uncovering the potential deity he may have been. Our journey begins with Beelzebub, the deity from whom Beelzebub's infamous name is derived. The title Baal, meaning Lord or Master, was commonly used in ancient Semitic religions to denote various gods, each often associated with specific locations, attributes, or powers. Think of Baal of Peor, known for his connection to the Moabites, or Baal Hammon, a Carthaginian solar deity associated with fertility and prosperity, or even Baal Hadad, the storm god of the Levant, whose power over the elements was both revered and feared. The use of Baal was widespread, indicating a complex pantheon of divine figures worshipped throughout the ancient Near East. These were not simply interchangeable names, but distinct entities, each with their own unique mythology, rituals, and sphere of influence. Within this diverse religious landscape, Beelzebub held a specific place as a local deity worshipped in the Philistine city of Ekron. Unlike the later demonized image, Beelzebub was primarily associated with healing and divination. The second book of Kings recounts the story of King Ahaziah of Israel, who, after falling from a window, sent messengers to consult Beelzebub about his chances of recovery, as it says in 2 Kings 1-2-3. This act highlights the perceived power of Beelzebub to influence health and foresee the future. The king sought his wisdom, hoping to discern whether his injury would prove fatal, showcasing the deity's role as a source of knowledge and potential intervention in matters of life and death. But how did a deity associated with healing transform into a demon associated with disease? To answer this, we must understand the religious and political clashes of the ancient Near East. As the Israelites sought to establish monotheism under Yahweh, they viewed Beelzebub and other foreign deities as false gods and rivals to their own deity. This theological conflict led to a systematic demonization of these rival figures, recasting them as malevolent entities opposed to the true God. Was this a divinely inspired act of purification or a calculated campaign of religious and political dominance? The name Beelzebub, literally Lord of the Flies, may have been used derisively by the Israelites, associating the deity with disease, decay, and other negative connotations. While the exact meaning of Zebub is debated, some scholars suggest it could also refer to a high place or prince. The association with flies is undeniable. Flies, often linked to pestilence and uncleanliness, became a potent symbol for demonizing the deity. This deliberate association with negative imagery contributed to Beelzebub's gradual transformation from a respected local deity into Beelzebub, a demon in Judeo-Christian demonology. This shift was not merely a change in name, but a complete inversion of his character and purpose. We can see this pattern throughout the Hebrew Bible, where Baal and other foreign deities are consistently condemned and demonized. Passages describe the destruction of pagan altars, the persecution of those who worshipped foreign gods, and the relentless condemnation of any practice that deviated from the worship of Yahweh. The book of Deuteronomy, for example, warns against following other gods, the gods of the peoples around you, and commands the Israelites to tear down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles. These actions reflect a clear agenda to eradicate rival religious practices and establish the exclusive worship of Yahweh. Historical accounts of religious conflicts and cultural clashes between the Israelites and other ancient Near Eastern peoples further illustrate the context in which these demonizations occurred. The Israelites were not simply engaging in theological debates. They were fighting for their survival and their identity in a region teeming with competing cultures and religions. Demonizing the gods of their enemies served to delegitimize their worshippers and reinforce the authority of Yahweh and the Israelite priesthood. In this light, the transformation of Baal-zebub into Beelzebub becomes not just a religious act, but a strategic move in a larger power struggle. Even the specific instances where the name Baal-zebub is used in a negative context emphasize this association with false worship and demonic influence. The evolution of the name from Lord of the Flies to a title synonymous with demonic power reveals a deliberate campaign to tarnish the deity's image and transform him into a figure of revulsion and fear. This was more than just a semantic shift, it was a rebranding, a calculated effort to rewrite the narrative and solidify Baal-zebub's place as an enemy of God. But what were the specific motivations behind this religious and political maneuvering? The demonization of Baal-zebub and other foreign deities reveals the Israelite desire to establish monotheism and assert their religious and cultural dominance. By portraying rival gods as evil and malevolent, they aimed to delegitimize their worshippers and solidify their own claim to divine favor. Demonizing rival deities served to delegitimize their worshippers and reinforce the authority of Yahweh and the Israelite priesthood, ensuring not just religious purity, but political and social control. The power to define good and evil, to dictate who is worthy of worship and who is not, is a powerful tool, one that the Israelites wielded with strategic precision. The role of religious propaganda and theological interpretation in shaping the perception of Baal-zebub as an evil and malevolent figure cannot be overstated. Through selective interpretation of ancient texts, the association of flies with disease and decay, and the condemnation of foreign religious practices, the Israelites successfully transformed a local deity into a symbol of demonic power. This wasn't a spontaneous occurrence, but a carefully orchestrated campaign of religious and cultural warfare. But what is the lasting impact of this transformation? While we have explored the origins of Beelzebub's transformation, the association with flies still warrants a deeper examination. Was the connection merely a tool for demonization, or does it point to something more profound? The next section will explore the multifaceted symbolism of flies throughout history and different cultures, uncovering surprising connections and challenging the purely negative associations that have become synonymous with Beelzebub. It is true that the common association of flies is overwhelmingly negative, linked to decay, disease, and general unpleasantness. But what if this is only one side of the story? What if, in some cultures, flies have been seen as symbols of something else entirely, persistence, divination, or even messengers between worlds? In ancient Egyptian beliefs, for example, flies were associated with bravery and persistence. Soldiers were sometimes awarded golden fly pendants, recognizing their tenacity and unwavering commitment on the battlefield. The fly's ability to persist even in the face of adversity was seen as a virtue, a quality worthy of emulation. Furthermore, some shamanistic practices utilize flies for divination or spirit communication. In certain traditions, shamans believe that flies can carry messages from the spirit world, acting as intermediaries between the living and the dead. By observing the behavior of flies, shamans can gain insights into the future or communicate with deceased ancestors. This perspective challenges the purely negative association with flies, suggesting a more complex and nuanced understanding of their role in the natural and spiritual realms. But does this mean that Beelzebub was misunderstood? Despite these alternative interpretations, we must reaffirm that in the case of Beelzebub, the association with flies was deliberately used to distort his image and transform him into a figure of revulsion and fear. While flies may have held different meanings in other contexts, their connection to Beelzebub was strategically employed to amplify negative connotations and solidify his demonic status. The demonization was not accidental. The negative symbolism was intentionally amplified to create a figure that inspired fear and disgust. Was this merely a historical accident, or is there a deeper, more sinister force at play? While we've acknowledged the potential for flies to symbolize persistence or even act as messengers, the persistent association of Beelzebub with flies demands a deeper examination. Is the Lord of the Flies merely a title of revulsion, or does it hint at something more profound within the cultural and historical interpretations of these often despised insects? To truly understand the terror Beelzebub inspires, we must dissect the multifaceted symbolism of flies, challenging the notion that their meaning is solely rooted in disease and decay. What hidden meanings have been assigned to these creatures throughout history, and how do they illuminate Beelzebub's complex legacy? Historically, the symbolism of flies has been surprisingly varied across ancient civilizations. In ancient Egypt, for instance, flies were not always viewed negatively. Rather, they were often associated with persistence, determination, and even courage. The Order of the Fly, a military honor, was bestowed upon soldiers who displayed exceptional bravery and tenacity in battle. Golden fly pendants and amulets have been discovered in tombs, suggesting that these insects were seen as symbols of protection and resilience, qualities highly valued in both life and death. Imagine a warrior, adorned with a golden fly, charging fearlessly into battle, embodying the unwavering spirit associated with this seemingly insignificant creature. But how can an insect so often linked to filth and disease also represent such noble virtues? Furthermore, the potential for flies as symbols of messengers or guides in Mesopotamian cultures, while less explicitly documented than in Egypt, offers another intriguing layer to their symbolism. In some interpretations, flies may have been linked to the underworld or divine realms, acting as intermediaries between the earthly and spiritual worlds. While direct textual evidence is scarce, the prevalence of insect imagery in Mesopotamian art and mythology suggests a deeper symbolic significance than mere annoyance. Could these buzzing creatures have been seen as carriers of secrets, whispering prophecies from the gods to those who knew how to listen? Or were they merely associated with the decaying flesh of the dead, forever bound to the realm of shadows? Even in ancient Greece, flies, while generally viewed with negativity, held subtle associations that went beyond simple disgust. Although not prominently featured in major myths, there are faint echoes of their presence in rituals and beliefs connected to death and prophecy. Some scholars suggest that flies, due to their association with decay, were sometimes linked to Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, crossroads, and the night, a figure often associated with the spirit world. Were flies simply a symbol of the inevitable decay that awaits all living things, or did they possess a more mystical connection to the hidden realms of prophecy and death? To truly understand the connection between flies and Beelzebub, we must dissect the different symbolic interpretations of these insects, differentiating between the positive, neutral, and undeniably negative. Flies, most commonly, are seen as vectors of disease and decay, representing death, uncleanliness, and demonic influence. This association stems from their habit of feeding on carrion and excrement, making them potent symbols of corruption and impurity. But this is not the only interpretation. Flies can also be seen as symbols of persistence, determination, and the ability to overcome obstacles. Their relentless buzzing and tireless activity can be interpreted as a testament to their unwavering drive. Finally, flies can also be seen as messengers, linking the earthly and spiritual realms, carrying secrets or prophecies. Consider, too, the concept of apotropaic magic, where objects or creatures are used to ward off evil spirits or disease. In some cultures, flies may have been employed in this manner, their perceived repulsiveness ironically serving as a deterrent to malevolent forces. By surrounding themselves with images or representations of flies, people may have sought to repel negative energies, using the very creatures associated with decay as a shield against darkness. Is it possible that this ancient belief system contributed to the complex and contradictory symbolism surrounding these insects? For example, in ancient Egyptian art, we find depictions of flies in various contexts, often adorning amulets and jewelry. These weren't simply decorative elements. They held symbolic weight, representing the wearer's courage, persistence, and ability to overcome challenges. Specific depictions of flies in tombs or temples suggest a protective function, ensuring the deceased's safe passage into the afterlife. Amulets shaped like flies have been found alongside mummies, underscoring their role as guardians against malevolent spirits. These images challenge the notion that flies were universally reviled, revealing a more nuanced understanding of their symbolic power. While direct Mesopotamian myths featuring flies as central characters are scarce, their presence in various artistic and religious contexts suggests a deeper symbolic significance. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, contains numerous references to insects and their role in the natural world, hinting at a broader understanding of their place in the cosmic order. Perhaps further archaeological discoveries will unearth more explicit evidence of flies as messengers or guides in Mesopotamian beliefs. Furthermore, in shamanistic practices across various cultures, insects, including flies, have been used for divination, healing, or spirit communication. Shamans in certain indigenous communities believe that flies can carry messages from the spirit world, acting as intermediaries between the living and the dead. By observing the behavior of flies, shamans can gain insights into the future or communicate with deceased ancestors. Ethnographic studies document rituals where shamans use fly wings or other insect parts in their ceremonies, harnessing their perceived spiritual power. Beyond their symbolic significance, fly amulets have historically been used as protection against evil or disease. Ancient civilizations believed that these amulets possessed the power to ward off negative energies and safeguard the wearer from harm. Archaeological discoveries have unearthed numerous examples of these amulets, providing tangible evidence of their widespread use and perceived efficacy. However, the negative associations of flies' disease, decay, and demonic influence were deliberately emphasized and amplified in the demonization of Beelzebub. The more nuanced or positive interpretations of flies, their association with persistence, courage, or even spiritual communication, were likely ignored or suppressed to create a purely negative image. The choice of Lord of the Flies was a strategic and deliberate attempt to portray Beelzebub as a repulsive and fearsome figure, irrevocably associated with corruption and death. Flies thrive in filth and decay, feeding on the most repugnant substances. By associating Beelzebub with these creatures, his image became synonymous with moral corruption, spiritual decay, and the very essence of evil. Understanding this deliberate demonization and the amplified negative symbolism of flies, provides crucial context for exploring Beelzebub's role in occult practices, a world where symbols are rarely one-dimensional. Does the occult understanding of Beelzebub as Lord of the Flies only focus on the more negative imagery, or does it attempt to see beyond the veil? What role do flies play in rituals associated with this dark entity? Are flies simply symbols of decay, or do they represent something more? While the predominant image of Beelzebub is undeniably tied to negative fly symbolism, deliberately distorted to create a figure of revulsion and fear, we must also acknowledge the potential for alternative interpretations within certain occult traditions. Some occultists view Beelzebub in a more complex light, perhaps as a source of power, forbidden knowledge, or even as a symbol of rebellion against established authority. Perhaps this is why there are traditions that see Beelzebub as a liberator or challenger, and not as a purely evil entity. However, let's not forget that these alternative interpretations are less common and often exist within specific occult subcultures, with different demons being seen as liberators and challengers. Despite these alternative interpretations, the predominant image of Beelzebub, as we know him, is a figure shaped by negative symbolism, a strategic campaign designed to create a figure of revulsion. The demonization of Beelzebub was not an accident. It was a calculated process, and the association with flies was a key element in shaping his terrifying legacy. In the end, the amplified symbolism emphasizes corruption, decay, and the darker aspects of human nature, making Beelzebub a potent symbol of fear and a reminder of the ever-present potential for darkness within us all. Could it be that his association with flies is a deliberate attempt to distract us from a more profound and disturbing truth? And what are the secrets hidden within the buzzing wings of the Lord of the Flies? While the negative symbolism associated with flies and their role in shaping the image of Beelzebub is undeniable, it's equally crucial to understand how this figure is perceived and engaged with within various occult traditions. Are the terrifying images of Beelzebub as Lord of the Flies the only lens through which occultists view him, or do they seek to understand him in a deeper, more complex way? In this section, we aim to explore how Beelzebub is viewed and worked with in various occult traditions, moving beyond the simplistic demonized image. It's important to acknowledge that the topic of occult practices can be sensitive, and we approach this exploration with a commitment to balance, objectivity, and respect for diverse perspectives. To understand Beelzebub's role in occult practices, we must delve into the historical context of his appearance in grimoires and occult texts. His earliest mentions can be traced back to key grimoires such as the Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, a collection of anonymous works compiled in the mid-17th century, but drawing on materials from centuries earlier. This grimoire, particularly the first book, the Ars Goetia, details the rituals for summoning 72 demons, including Beelzebub. We also find him in the Grand Grimoire, a later text that presents a more sensational and dramatic view of demonology. What is it about these texts that cemented Beelzebub's place in the occult imagination, and how have these descriptions shaped the rituals associated with him? As we journey through these grimoires, it becomes evident that descriptions of Beelzebub evolve over time, revealing shifts in his perceived appearance, powers, and associations. In some texts, he is described as a towering figure with a grotesque appearance, often adorned with symbols of decay and disease. In others, he is associated with the element of fire, embodying destructive and transformative power. Some accounts even mention his ability to grant the power of flight, a symbolic representation of spiritual ascension or escape from earthly constraints. What do these varying descriptions tell us about the changing perceptions of Beelzebub within occult traditions, and how do they influence the ways in which he is invoked? Within occult practices, Beelzebub assumes distinct roles and possesses specific attributes that define his perceived powers and responsibilities. He is often referred to as a commander of legions, highlighting his authority over infernal forces. He is also seen as a granter of power, offering occultists the means to achieve their desires, whether it be through knowledge, influence, or control. Some traditions even recognize him as a patron of black magic, associating him with the darker aspects of occult practice. But what are the specific types of power that Beelzebub is believed to grant, and what are the potential consequences of wielding such power? His relationships with other demons or spirits within the infernal hierarchy are complex and often vary depending on the specific occult tradition. Some texts depict him as a close ally of Lucifer, serving as his second-in-command and sharing his rebellious spirit. Others portray him as having rivalries or alliances with other powerful demons, creating a complex web of infernal politics. Some accounts suggest a hierarchical structure, with Beelzebub commanding legions of lesser spirits, each with their own unique abilities and responsibilities. How do these relationships shape Beelzebub's role within the infernal hierarchy, and how do they influence the types of rituals in which he is invoked? Beelzebub is typically invoked or venerated in rituals or practices with specific purposes in mind, each intended to tap into his unique powers and attributes. These purposes often include gaining knowledge of hidden secrets, acquiring power over others, or exerting influence over events. Some rituals may involve seeking protection from enemies, while others may focus on achieving personal transformation or spiritual enlightenment. But what are the specific tools, symbols, and incantations used in these rituals, and what is their intended effect? Concrete examples of rituals, invocations, and occult practices associated with Beelzebub can be found in various grimoires and historical accounts, offering a glimpse into the practical application of these beliefs. The Grand Grimoire, for instance, provides detailed instructions for summoning Beelzebub, specifying the tools, symbols, and incantations required for the ritual. The practitioner is instructed to create a specific sigil, a symbolic representation of Beelzebub, and to recite a series of incantations designed to invoke his presence. Candles, incense, and other ritual implements are used to create a sacred space and facilitate communication with the demonic realm. What are the potential risks and rewards associated with these rituals, and what precautions must be taken to ensure a safe and successful invocation? Within these rituals, specific passages from grimoires or occult texts describe Beelzebub's role, often providing detailed instructions for invoking his presence and soliciting his aid. These passages may include specific lines to be recited, ceremonial steps to be followed, and offerings to be made. For example, the Lesser Key of Solomon instructs the practitioner to call upon Beelzebub with specific incantations, acknowledging his power and requesting his assistance in achieving a desired outcome. The practitioner may be required to make a blood sacrifice or offer other valuable items as a sign of respect and devotion. What is the significance of these specific passages and ceremonial steps, and how do they contribute to the overall effectiveness of the ritual? Throughout history, numerous figures and occultists have been believed to have worked with Beelzebub, leaving behind documented accounts or legends associated with their experiences. Some of these figures are shrouded in mystery, their identities obscured by time and rumor. Others are well-known historical figures who have been linked to occult practices through anecdotal evidence or speculation. Stories circulate about individuals who have made pacts with Beelzebub, gaining wealth, power, or knowledge in exchange for their souls or service. Are these accounts merely legends, or do they contain a grain of truth about the potential consequences of working with a figure like Beelzebub? Interpretations of Beelzebub in occultism diverge significantly. While some practitioners view him as a dangerous and malevolent entity to be feared and avoided, others see him as a source of power and knowledge. Some occultists may approach Beelzebub with caution, seeking to control or manipulate him for their own purposes. Others may view him as a guide or mentor, offering wisdom and insight into the darker aspects of existence. Why do these divergent interpretations exist, and what factors influence an individual's perception of Beelzebub? Working with a figure like Beelzebub carries profound psychological and philosophical implications, raising questions about the nature of good and evil, the pursuit of power, and the boundaries of human experience. For some, it may represent a path to empowerment and self-discovery, challenging societal norms and embracing the shadow self. For others, it may lead to psychological harm, spiritual corruption, or unintended consequences. Does working with Beelzebub lead to empowerment, transformation, or corruption, and what are the potential risks and rewards associated with this path? The symbolism and meaning behind the rituals and practices associated with Beelzebub are multifaceted, reflecting the complex interplay of human desires, fears, and aspirations. Some may see the rituals as a way to tap into primal energies, harnessing the power of the subconscious mind. Others may view them as a symbolic representation of inner transformation, confronting and overcoming personal demons. Still, others may interpret them as a means of connecting with spiritual forces beyond the realm of human understanding. Do these rituals offer genuine spiritual insight, or are they simply a reflection of our own psychological projections? Understanding Beelzebub's role in occultism leads us to question the potential dangers and ethical considerations involved in working with such a figure. What are the risks of psychological harm, spiritual corruption, or unintended consequences? As we transition to explore the psychological reasons behind Beelzebub's enduring terror and influence, we must remember that working with any demonic entity is not without potential repercussions. Even the most experienced occultists acknowledge the potential for negative outcomes or unforeseen consequences when working with Beelzebub or any demonic entity. Cautionary tales abound, warning of practitioners who have suffered psychological breakdowns, spiritual corruption, or even physical harm as a result of their interactions with these forces. The risks are not limited to the practitioner themselves. Their actions may also have unintended consequences for others, leading to unforeseen harm or misfortune. Are these cautionary tales merely superstitious folklore, or do they offer valuable lessons about the potential dangers of tampering with forces beyond our comprehension? Addressing the ethical implications of invoking a figure associated with evil and malevolence forces us to confront difficult questions about the morality of seeking power or knowledge through such means. Is it justifiable to consort with demonic entities in pursuit of personal gain or enlightenment? Does the end justify the means, even if those means involve invoking a force associated with darkness and corruption? These ethical considerations are not easily dismissed and require careful reflection and consideration. Where does one draw the line between seeking knowledge and embracing evil? Ultimately, Beelzebub's enduring presence in occultism reflects the complex interplay of human ambitions, fears, and desires, serving as a mirror that reflects our own shadow selves and the darker aspects of the human psyche. He serves as a mirror, reflecting our own shadow selves and the darker aspects of the human psyche. Perhaps his nature is a reflection of the conjurer. Maybe the demonic aspects are not inherent, but a consequence of perception. Is Beelzebub a demon or simply a reflection of our own inner demons, amplified and projected onto an external entity? Having explored Beelzebub's role in occultism, it's time to delve into the murky depths of the human psyche and analyze the psychological reasons behind his enduring terror and influence. While the manifestations of fear are subjective and vary from person to person, what underlying psychological mechanisms are at play that allow a figure like Beelzebub to inspire such dread across cultures and centuries? Let's begin to uncover the roots of this primal fear. To understand the psychological impact of Beelzebub, we must first acknowledge the historical and cultural attitudes toward demons and the pervasive fear and anxiety surrounding the unknown and unseen. Throughout history, societies have grappled with forces beyond their comprehension, often attributing misfortune, disease, and social upheaval to malevolent entities. What if everything we can't explain becomes something we fear? Common demonic attributes like deception, manipulation, and the ability to control the minds of humans only amplified these anxieties, preying on the vulnerability of individuals and communities. This fear was often deliberately cultivated by religious and political institutions to maintain control and enforce conformity. But how do we project these fears? History is replete with periods of intense demonization and witch hunts, fueled by social and psychological factors that created a climate of paranoia and suspicion. The witch trials of the early modern period, for example, saw thousands of innocent people accused of consorting with demons and subjected to horrific tortures and executions. These events were often triggered by periods of social unrest, economic hardship, or religious conflict, creating a fertile ground for scapegoating and the projection of collective anxieties. The demonization of marginalized groups, such as women, religious minorities, and the poor, served to reinforce existing power structures and maintain social order. In this context, demonizing figures like Beelzebub provided a convenient outlet for these anxieties, allowing people to project their fears and insecurities onto an external entity, absolving themselves of responsibility for societal problems. But how far have we really come since then? At the heart of Beelzebub's psychological impact lies his potent association with flies, disease, decay, and corruption, each triggering primal fears and anxieties deeply embedded in the human psyche. Flies, as vectors of disease and harbingers of death, evoke a visceral sense of revulsion and disgust, tapping into our innate fear of contamination and mortality. Their association with filth, excrement, and rotting corpses further amplifies this negative imagery, making them potent symbols of physical and spiritual decay. The buzzing sound of flies, often associated with swarms and infestations, can trigger a sense of unease and anxiety, signaling the presence of unseen threats and potential danger. This deep revulsion of flies also ties into a psychological fear of the body's fragility. How much of our subconscious fear is derived from knowing that our bodies will ultimately rot? Corruption, both physical and moral, carries a significant psychological weight, representing societal breakdown and the loss of innocence. The image of rotting flesh, festering wounds, and decaying matter evokes a sense of horror and disgust, reminding us of our own mortality and the impermanence of all things. Moral corruption, on the other hand, symbolizes the erosion of ethical values, social cohesion, and personal integrity, leading to a sense of disillusionment and despair. Beelzebub, as a symbol of both physical and moral decay, embodies these fears, representing the potential for societal collapse and the loss of all that is good and pure. Furthermore, in Jungian psychology, Beelzebub can be interpreted as a representation of the shadow self, the repressed or disowned aspects of the human psyche. The shadow self encompasses our darker impulses, negative emotions, and socially unacceptable desires, those parts of ourselves that we try to hide from the world and from ourselves. By projecting these shadow aspects onto an external figure like Beelzebub, we can confront and grapple with them in a safe and symbolic way. However, failing to integrate the shadow self can lead to psychological imbalance and destructive behavior, as the repressed aspects of the psyche can manifest in negative ways. Is Beelzebub, then, simply a scapegoat for our own internal struggles? The psychological impact of Beelzebub is vividly illustrated in art, literature, and popular culture, where he is often depicted as a terrifying figure who evokes fear, revulsion, and a sense of unease. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, Beelzebub is portrayed as a powerful and charismatic fallen angel, second only to Lucifer in the infernal hierarchy. His eloquent speeches and commanding presence evoke a sense of awe and terror, highlighting his ability to sway others to his cause. In William Golding's Lord of the Flies, the severed pig's head, covered in swarming flies, becomes a symbol of primal savagery and the disintegration of social order, reflecting the darkness that lurks within the human heart. These depictions tap into our deepest fears and anxieties, reminding us of the potential for evil that exists both within ourselves and in the world around us. But are these artistic depictions exaggerations, or do they reflect a deeper psychological truth? In modern media, the consistency of Beelzebub as a fear manifest is consistently prevalent. In film, he is portrayed in many forms. The Dark Lord, a tempter, a trickster, all variations on a theme. All invoke reactions of fear and unease, reminding audiences of an inherent darkness. In television, the name Beelzebub is often enough to evoke a sense of fear in the show's characters and audience. In literature, Beelzebub is used as a plot device to push characters to the edge and show the dark sides of humanity. Personal accounts and anecdotes from individuals who have reported feeling fear or unease when encountering images or descriptions of Beelzebub provide further evidence of his psychological impact. Some individuals describe feeling a sense of dread, anxiety, or even physical discomfort when exposed to representations of Beelzebub, while others report experiencing disturbing dreams or intrusive thoughts. These reactions may be due to pre-existing beliefs or cultural conditioning, but they also suggest that Beelzebub taps into deeper, more primal fears that are universally shared. Furthermore, psychological studies and experiments have explored the effects of fear and discussed on human behavior and cognition, demonstrating the powerful influence of these emotions on our perceptions, judgments, and actions. Studies have shown that exposure to fear-inducing stimuli can lead to increased anxiety, heightened vigilance, and even impaired cognitive function. Ultimately, Beelzebub serves as a potent reflection of human fears and desires, embodying our anxieties about death, disease, corruption, and the unknown. His demonization may be a way of projecting our own darker impulses and desires onto an external entity, absolving ourselves of responsibility and maintaining a sense of moral purity. However, Beelzebub can also be interpreted as a symbol of rebellion and resistance against oppressive authority, attracting individuals who feel marginalized or disempowered. The very act of confronting and engaging with a figure like Beelzebub can be seen as an act of defiance, challenging societal norms and asserting one's own autonomy. What does it mean to embrace the darkness within? Moreover, Beelzebub is connected to base instincts that would be feared by society but secretly desired by individuals. Power, control, and freedom from societal constraints are all desires that can be associated with Beelzebub, even if they are viewed as morally reprehensible. By confronting these desires and acknowledging their presence within ourselves, we can gain a deeper understanding of our own motivations and behaviors. Exploring the potential for empowerment through confronting these fears suggests that facing Beelzebub can lead to self-discovery and personal growth. But does this empowerment come at a cost? Having explored the psychological impact of Beelzebub, it's time to consider his relevance in modern society. What place does a figure like the Lord of Flies have in a world increasingly shaped by science, technology, and rational thought? Has anything changed in modern society that alters Beelzebub's impact? In modern society, with the rise of science and reason, overt fear of demons may seem irrational or outdated. We are less likely to attribute misfortune or disease to supernatural forces, relying instead on scientific explanations and technological solutions. However, these primal fears have simply been reinterpreted or rationalized, manifesting as anxieties about societal collapse, environmental destruction, or technological dystopia. The fear of the unknown has not disappeared. It has merely shifted its focus to new and emerging threats. Figures like Beelzebub may serve as a convenient symbol for these modern anxieties, embodying our fears about the loss of control and the erosion of moral values. The image of swarming flies, for example, can be seen as a metaphor for the spread of misinformation, the erosion of privacy, and the overwhelming nature of modern technology. The concept of corruption can be applied to political institutions, corporate greed, and the abuse of power, reflecting a deep-seated cynicism about the state of the world. But what about all the good in the world? Despite these counterarguments, Beelzebub remains a potent figure due to his ability to tap into deep-seated human anxieties and fears. His enduring legacy lies in his capacity to reflect our own shadow selves and the darker aspects of the human psyche. While the specific manifestations of these fears may change over time, the underlying emotions remain constant, ensuring Beelzebub's continued relevance as a symbol of evil, corruption, and the unknown. But what structures are we building that nurture this archetype? In essence, the essence of Beelzebub thrives in structures we create. As we conclude our exploration of Beelzebub, it's important to acknowledge the intricate tapestry of beliefs, fears, and symbols that have shaped his enduring legacy. From his potential origins as a local deity to his transformation into a high-ranking demon, the journey of Beelzebub is a testament to the power of cultural narratives and the enduring human need to grapple with the darker aspects of existence. But what do the shadows tell us? In summary, we've traced Beelzebub's path from Beelzebub, potentially a deity associated with healing, to his demonization in Judeo-Christian demonology and various occult traditions. This demonization was a deliberate process, associating Beelzebub with negative symbolism, particularly flies and corruption, even though fly symbolism can have multiple interpretations. We also acknowledge the divergent interpretations of Beelzebub in occultism, where some view him as a source of power, knowledge, or rebellion against established norms. But is this rebellion justified? The enduring legacy of Beelzebub connects to broader themes of fear, power, rebellion, and societal control, making him relevant in contemporary society. What does Beelzebub's existence imply about our own capacity to inflict terror on others? Consider the nature of evil, the human tendency to create scapegoats, and the psychological function of demonizing figures like Beelzebub. He serves as a mirror, reflecting our own shadow selves and the darker aspects of the human psyche. Connect him to modern anxieties about societal collapse, environmental destruction, and technological dystopia. He embodies our fears about the loss of control and the erosion of moral values. But do we give him too much credit? Reflect on the enduring power of archetypes and the psychological mechanisms that contribute to the fear and revulsion associated with figures like Beelzebub. Understanding our own fears and desires becomes crucial in avoiding projecting them onto external entities. What Jungian shadows lurk within, influencing our perception of Beelzebub and the world around us? Consider that understanding our own darkness is essential to controlling our destiny. But what if we fail? Perhaps the question to ponder is this: do we control our demons, or do they control us? If you found this exploration of Beelzebub's terrifying legacy informative, please give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel to join our community as we continue to delve into demonology, occultism, and other esoteric topics, uncovering hidden truths and challenging conventional understandings. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for future content exploring similar figures in demonology and specific occult practices. Until next time, keep the swarm away.